For 6 months, Aaliyah Cooper's alarm went off at 5 a.m. Not for herself, for George. She was 22 years old, working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over her head. Hospital cafeteria by day, grocery store stockroom by night. Most weeks, she was 1 paycheck away from eviction. But every single morning at 6:15, she stood at the same bus stop on Clayton Street with the same offering: a peanut butter sandwich, a banana, coffee, and a thermos. George Fletcher was 68, white, homeless, and full of stories nobody believed. Most people crossed the street to avoid him. Some pretended he was invisible. But Aaliyah had stopped seeing past him 2 weeks after she started taking the number 47 bus. It happened on a cold March morning. She'd packed an extra sandwich for lunch, but knew she wouldn't have time to eat it. Her shift at the hospital ran until 3. Then she had to be at the grocery store by 4 to stock shelves until midnight. The sandwich would just go bad in her locker. George was awake when she approached, his eyes sharp and clear. He watched her carefully, like he was used to people either ignoring him or yelling at him to move along. "Excuse me," Aaliyah said, holding out the wrapped sandwich. "I made too much. You want this?" He stared at the sandwich, then at her face. For a long moment he didn't move. "You need that more than I do," he said quietly. "That's debatable," Aaliyah replied. "But I'm offering." He took it with both hands like it was something precious. "Thank you, miss." "Aaliyah." "George." He nodded once. "George Fletcher." She almost walked away then, almost went back to her routine of not seeing him, not getting involved. But something about the way he'd said thank you, with dignity rather than desperation, made her pause. "Do you take your coffee black or with sugar?" she asked. His eyebrows lifted. "Black's fine." The next morning, she brought coffee in a thermos and a banana. The morning after that, another sandwich and an apple. By the end of the first week, it had become a routine she couldn't imagine breaking. 6:15 a.m. every single day. George was always awake, always waiting at the same spot. They'd talk for maybe 10 minutes before her bus came. He'd ask about her classes. She was taking nursing courses at the community college, 2 nights a week when she could afford it. She'd ask about his day, and he'd tell her stories. Strange stories. "Back in my helicopter days," he'd say, staring past her at nothing. "We flew senators out to places that don't exist on maps." Or, "I worked for a 3-letter agency once. Can't tell you which one, but I can tell you those folks don't forget faces." Aaliyah figured he was confused. Maybe mentally ill. Maybe just old and lonely, building himself a past that felt more important than sleeping on cardboard. She didn't correct him. She just listened. Other people weren't so kind. One morning in April, a businessman in an expensive suit walked past and deliberately kicked George's blanket into the gutter. Aaliyah was 10 feet away, about to cross the street. "Hey!" She spun around, her voice sharp. "What's wrong with you?" The businessman didn't even slow down. "He's blocking the sidewalk." "That's somebody's grandfather," Aaliyah shot back. The man kept walking. George sat quietly, pulling his blanket back from the dirty water pooling at the curb. His hands shook. From cold or anger, Aaliyah couldn't tell. She helped him wring out the blanket. It smelled like mildew and exhaust fumes. "You didn't have to do that," George said softly. "Yeah, I did." He looked at her for a long time. Then he smiled. A sad, knowing smile. "You've got a fight in you. That's good." He folded the damp blanket across his lap. "You're going to need it." Aaliyah didn't understand what he meant. Not then. By May, the routine was as automatic as breathing. Wake up at 5. Make 2 sandwiches. 1 for George, 1 for herself. Pack a banana. Pour coffee into the thermos. Walk 3 blocks. Sit with George for 10 minutes. Catch the 6:30 bus. It wasn't charity. It didn't feel like charity. It felt like the only thing in her life that made sense. Aaliyah's apartment was a studio on the 4th floor of a building that should have been condemned years ago. 300 square feet. A hot plate instead of a stove. A bathroom where the shower only worked if you kicked the pipes first. Rent was $650 a month, and she was always 2 weeks behind. The eviction notice had been taped to her door in March. She'd talked the landlord into a payment plan and extra $40 a week until she caught up. She'd been paying it off ever since, which meant every other bill got pushed to the edge. Her kitchen counter told the story. Electric bill past due. Medical debt from an emergency room visit 2 years ago, now in collections. Student loan payment deferred again. Cell phone 1 month from disconnection. And in the middle of all that paper, a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. Aaliyah stood at the counter on a Tuesday night in late May, doing the math in her head. She'd gotten paid that morning, $280 from the hospital, another $160 from the grocery store. Subtract rent, subtract the payment plan, subtract bus fare for 2 weeks, $90 left for everything else. She opened the fridge, a carton of eggs with 3 left, half a jug of milk, some wilted lettuce she should have thrown out days ago. That was it. Her stomach had been empty since lunch, but she'd learned to ignore that feeling. She'd eat tomorrow, or the day after. It didn't matter. What mattered was the bread and peanut butter. Enough for another week of sandwiches for George. Maybe 2 weeks if she stretched it.
Aaliyah closed the fridge and leaned against it, pressing her forehead to the cold metal door. She could stop. She could keep the sandwiches for herself, save the coffee money, catch up on the electric bill before they shut it off. George would understand. He'd probably tell her to stop anyway if he knew how tight things were. But the thought of walking past that bus stop, seeing him there, not stopping, she couldn't do it. At the hospital cafeteria the next day, Mrs. Carter noticed. Mrs. Carter was the kitchen supervisor, 60-something, Chinese-American with the kind of sharp eyes that saw everything. She'd worked at the hospital for 30 years and had seen every version of struggling that existed. "Are you eating today?" Mrs. Carter asked, watching Aaliyah wipe down tables during the lunch rush. "I ate breakfast," Aaliyah lied. Mrs. Carter crossed her arms. "Are you feeding that homeless man again?" Aaliyah's shoulders stiffened. "His name is George. I know his name, honey. I'm asking if you're feeding him instead of yourself." "I'm fine," Mrs. Carter sighed. She disappeared into the kitchen and came back 5 minutes later with a container of leftover pasta and a bread roll. She pressed it into Aaliyah's hands. "You eat this now. I don't want to see you passing out on my shift." Her voice softened. "He's a person, I get it. But you know what else?" "What?" "You're a person too." Aaliyah stared at the container. Her throat felt tight. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just eat." That night, lying on her mattress on the floor, she'd sold the bed frame. 2 months ago to make rent, Aaliyah stared at the ceiling and did the math again. If she skipped her Thursday class, she could pick up an extra shift at the grocery store, another $40. If she walked to work instead of taking the bus 3 days a week, she'd save $12. If she asked the landlord for 1 more week, her phone buzzed. A text from the electric company. Final notice. Service will be disconnected in 7 days without payment of $127. Aaliyah closed her eyes. 1 more week of bringing George breakfast. That's all she'd commit to. 1 more week and then she'd have to stop. She'd explain it to him. He'd understand. She had to take care of herself first. That's what anyone would say. That's what made sense. But when Friday morning came, Aaliyah still made 2 sandwiches. Still poured coffee into the thermos. I still walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. George was waiting, same as always. And when he split his sandwich in half and handed part of it back to her, "Fair is fair," he said simply. Aaliyah had to turn away so he wouldn't see her crying.